creating snapshots in Photoshop. We're going to look at the snapshot command. Really, a snapshot is just a temporary look at an image. I'm going to show you where those snapshots are stored. So we need to open up the history panel. If you have your Essentials screen interface layout set up here in Essentials and you have reset it, you're going to see an icon here at the top that indicates the history panel. So I can open it that way. If you're not able to locate that, go under the window menu and then find history. So the history panel is a place that we store our tasks, and they're stored as states. By default, you will have 20 states, and they're the 20 things that you have done last. So if I say take my quick selection tool and drag to select the tree frog here, we're going to get it at least semi-okay. Oh, too much there, that's okay. What I want you to see is as I'm dragging this, I'm still doing all one task. Okay? So I can go ahead and get all of this except for some extra, and we'll take those away in a moment. When I let up on my mouse, there is my state. Now if I want to take away areas, let up on mouse, there's another state. Okay? So you get the idea. Everything that you do, if I deselect, there's another state. Everything that I do becomes a state, and by default I am remembering 20. So we can change this actually under Preferences. So if you go to Edit and Preferences on a PC, on a Mac you're going to go under the Photoshop CC and go to Preferences, and we're looking for Performance. Under Performance we're going to look for History States. Now be very cautious and careful in this dialog box. There are a lot of things that you can do that will really affect how Photoshop runs. You can really break a lot of things here. I typically say you can't break it. Guess what? This is the place that you can break it. So be careful. Now history states can go up to 1,000. Would you ever want to have 1,000 history states? I don't think so. Photoshop will crash. I guarantee it. It's too much to remember. It might not crash until you get to step 999 and then it'll crash. So make sure that you keep this manageable. 20 to 40 probably will work just fine. Okay, so in my case, I do have 20. Let's just go okay out of this. So that means the last 20 things I do will be stored as a state. When I get to 21, my number one thing, which happens to be make a layer, will be deleted. So what Photoshop will do is it deletes the oldest states to make room for the new history states. Now up at the top here, this is where my snapshots are. And right now I have one snapshot. A snapshot, remember, is just a temporary copy of the image that contains the history states made to that point. Okay, so by default, Photoshop will automatically create a snapshot of an image when I open it. Now, if it seems that Photoshop is taking forever to open up documents, you can turn this Create New Snapshot Automatically feature off. Sometimes it helps people with the way that Photoshop is running and it helps their program open faster. It's a good idea to leave it checked. You can change it up here in the History panel, and we're looking at the History Panel Options button, and I'm going to History Options. Okay, so here it is, Automatically Create First Snapshot. Like I mentioned, it's a good habit just to leave it on. It's also a good habit to create a new snapshot before you begin any kind of massive editing session. You have some pretty intense editing that you're going to be working with. Go ahead and make a snapshot before you do it, because that way you can always revert back to that earlier stage of development. You're not at a loss. So I guarantee if you're going to go through more than 20 to 30 to 40 states, history states, having that snapshot to go back to will be very, very nice. Okay, so what we can do with the snapshot, we can base it on the entire image, the full document. We can base it on merged layers, which combines all the layers in the current image as a single layer. It's as if you're creating a JPEG. And then you can also create a snapshot based on just the current layer, which is only the active layer at the time that you took the snapshot. So as you can see, we can have multiple snapshots in a document. Let me go ahead and create one. 2 methods to create a new snapshot. The fast way, going down into the bottom of the history panel, looking for that little camera icon, clicking on it, boom, there's a snapshot. This method is automatic. It's just the same as creating a new layer with the new layer icon. It will just automatically create it. Photoshop will number them, snapshot 1, snapshot 2, snapshot 3 on down. The longer method of creating a snapshot, going back up here to the history panel options button and creating new snapshot. When we do this, did you notice there is an ellipse, the ellipsis, dot, dot, dot. We can now have more settings. We have more options for settings here. So I have a name and a from, so I can name this. Notice Photoshop automatically knew this was my second snapshot, so it's doing number 2. I can choose to make this new snapshot from 3 different ways. The entire image, like I mentioned, which is the full document option. Merge layers, which combines all those layers into a current image on a single layer, which is like a JPEG. Or just the current layer, which is the current layer that's active. This current layer will only be lit up if you do not have a background layer. If you have a background layer that is currently your active layer, that's not going to show up. Okay? So I'm going to click OK, and there you see number 2. So snapshots appear in the order that they were created at the top of the history panel. So first one when I open the document, second one that I created, third one that I created. Okay? Here's the bad news. Everything is good so far. Here's the bad news. Snapshots are not saved with a file. So we've been asking Adobe for years. Photoshop users are pleading with Adobe, please make this something that can be saved with the document. And it has not. So the history states, those all go away, as do the snapshots. When I click save and close this document, history panel is completely wiped out. So don't rely on those snapshots later on to go back to. What you can do if you want to take one of these snapshots and sort of preserve it, what you can do is create a new document based on this. Again, back up here, create new document, and there it is, snapshot 1. This is the new document that I just created based on my snapshot. Back to here. Okay? If I wanted to rename a snapshot, it's the same method as renaming a layer. Double click slowly on the actual title, it'll highlight, and this allows me to rename it. Using snapshots is a good habit to get into, especially if you're working pretty intensely on a project that you want to kind of preserve or keep little benchmark states. Grab a snapshot every once in a while, something that you can go back to, that you don't have to go back all the way to the very beginning.